1, 2, 3.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Carver, and today I will be talking about Alzheimer's. To begin my speech, I thought I would start with a little story. This story is about the man you see on the screen. This is my grandfather. His name is Ernest King. This story takes place kind of his high school years. My grandfather was not the smartest man in high school. He actually failed his senior year and had to repeat it with his younger brother. He was one of 4 brothers with one older sister. When he had to repeat it, he was actually drafted into the Army, but they allowed him to finish out his senior year. Then he was shipped off to Germany. While in Germany, he married his high school sweetheart. They had 1 kid. She was born, Deanna, over in Germany. And their story kind of continues on from there. Eventually, his wife passes away from cancer, and he marries my grandmother, who you see making the duck lips next to him, sticking out his tongue. So why did I tell you all this? Why did I just give you a random factoid about my family? Well, I've probably heard that story 151 times, I would say, because my grandfather has Alzheimer's. So every time he sees me, he decides to tell me his life story over and over again. So I kind of know that story like the back of my hand. I could go into a lot greater detail, but I figured I would save you guys that time today. So with this, I decided to do my presentation on this because I have such a personal connection with it. Over the past few weeks, I've done extensive research using mainly the Alzheimer's Association website to kind of gather some information that I will be sharing with you today. Today I hope to explain the points of what Alzheimer's is, what the disease kind of does to a family and the person who's affected by it, and what can be done about it. To start off, we'll start with the medical definition, which I took from the Alzheimer's Association. Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia, a general term for memory loss and other cognitive abilities serious enough to interfere with daily life. There are actually 2 types of Alzheimer's. There's early onset Alzheimer's and then late onset. Early onset is for people younger than 65. Late onset is 65 and up. There's a more personal definition that I kind of have a connection with, and I know some of you do, as when I took my survey questions, some of you said that you know someone who has Alzheimer's. But it's a disease that kind of slowly takes away the person you love. That's how I kind of look at it. It's a little sad, but... So some of the symptoms, there's losing objects in the beginning stage. You know, people start forgetting names, forgetting kind of what they were going to do that day. Very small things. As you move on a little bit later, that's when the confusion about the date and time comes in. They become withdrawn and try not to be in big crowds, and they start to wander off. And then in the very late stages, they need full round care. Luckily, my grandfather is not in the late stages. He's around the middle time, but we are slowly seeing him progress. At the start, it was just him forgetting that he put a soda in the freezer and it explodes. That's a minor thing, but slowly he starts to lose his ability to drive a car. So he had to give up his favorite truck. He can't do his job anymore. He used to be a carpenter, so he can no longer work. And now my grandmother is starting to creep into the full round care because she's had to retire from her job. And now they live just off retirement and try to make it through. So this disease kind of slowly takes away everything. As far as if it's common, all of these facts are from the Alzheimer's Association again. Alzheimer's is actually the 6th leading cause of death in the United States, with 5.7 million Americans living with it. Every 65 seconds, someone develops the disease of Alzheimer's. With the 2 types of Alzheimer's, early onset is actually rarer than the late onset. Early onset accounts for 5% of all people with Alzheimer's. As far as if you can get it or not, early onset is genetic, so if one of your parents or grandparents does have that, there's a possibility that gene could be passed down to you. However, the late onset Alzheimer's, there's no proof that it can be passed down. It could just happen just by chance. but they are doing more research, and there's a possibility, but there's no 100% clarity on that. Now that you have a little more understanding on what the disease is and what it causes, we can talk about what it does to the family and to the person itself. Starting with what it does physically, to a family, to a person, it really makes them become tired. They grow tired and fatigued because they have to deal with someone constantly asking them questions, constantly repeating themselves, and that can just take a toll on you. For the person themselves, it causes the brain to actually shrink over time, and that disrupts the brain's ability to process messages. So what happens is a plaque-like substance builds up on your brains, what are called neurons. I kind of think of them as cell phone towers. So your brain sends messages from one cell phone tower to another. But what this disease does, it builds up plaque on those, and the messages can't get through, and they can't send other messages. So it usually focuses on the parts of your brain that deal with memory, and slowly just kind of takes over. As far as the emotional side, of course, emotions are kind of all over the place for a family because you're having to watch someone you love disappear slowly. So there's a lot of emotional roller coasters. My grandmother always says there are good days and there are bad days, both for her and for my grandfather, because the person becomes highly emotional. There are days where he will be perfect, everything's good, but there are also days where you could accidentally drop a fork and he becomes irritated at you or annoyed, like a little kid kind of deal. So it kind of depends on what stage and the disease they're at, but the emotions are just kind of everywhere. The overall effect of the disease is really that a family can kind of either fall apart or fall together. By that I mean sometimes family members can pull really close together because they want to make sure their loved one remembers them, they're there for them, they kind of support them, but there are also people who kind of pull away because they don't want to watch the person they love kind of disappear. So it really just depends on how the family is. As far as the person, they become someone else. You can see them try to be like they used to be, but sadly, it gets to a point where they can't anymore. So we've discussed the diseases and the effect it has on the family, but what options do they have? What can be done to stop Alzheimer's? Sadly, at this moment, there is no cure. Again, from Alzheimer's Association, currently there are 5 Alzheimer's drugs approved by the FDA that treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, temporarily helping memory and thinking problems, with a 6th drug available globally. With that being said, these drugs don't stop everything that Alzheimer's brings with it. Of course, there are plenty of clinical trials and drugs that you can test if you want to, but there's no guarantee. My grandmother's doctor actually told her about my grandfather. He's about to hit the point where the drugs don't help anymore. They just kind of lose their effect. So she can continue to give him those if she wants to, kind of like a placebo, if it'll make her feel better, not because it's really helping him at all. Coming from the CDC, because there is no cure, death rates for Alzheimer's disease are increasing, unlike heart disease and cancer death rates that are on the decline. It has been shown to be underreported in death certificates, and therefore the proportion of older people who die from Alzheimer's can be considerably higher. So sadly, because there is no treatment, no cure, people are just going to continue to pass away until we can find one that will work. Of course, there are plenty of things that you can do to kind of help your family and the person going through the disease. There are support groups. A support group, if you aren't sure what that is, it's a group of people who have common experiences or concerns, and they kind of come together and provide each other encouragement and help each other through the situation. With this disease, it would probably be the families of a person with Alzheimer's kind of coming together, talking about what they go through, their experiences. For example, my grandmother, she has a Facebook page that she follows, and they kind of post about, oh, he stuck another remote in the refrigerator, and someone will comment, oh, my husband was doing that 2 weeks ago. This is what we did to kind of help him remember where it goes. So they kind of give each other different advice and just help them through the rougher patches. You can also find different ways to raise awareness through fundraisers. One of the biggest fundraisers for Alzheimer's is Walk to End Alzheimer's, started by the Alzheimer's Association. Held annually in more than 600 communities nationwide, Walk to End Alzheimer's is the world's largest event to raise awareness and funds for Alzheimer's care, support, and research. So they kind of provide money for patients who can't afford the treatments, who can't afford a car, who can't afford food. They kind of help anyone struggling with Alzheimer's and anyone helping someone with Alzheimer's get the care that they need. If you can't attend a walk or you don't know where a walk is around you, they do have a place you can search on their website that you can find one if you would like to join one. There are plenty of other ways to also donate. There is donating a car, where you can literally tell them that you would like to donate your old car. They'll come, tow it away from your house for you, and sell it. And then all the proceeds will go to someone suffering from Alzheimer's. You can also donate your stock, which you just sell like your stock, stock market. I don't know really how to explain that one, but you just kind of sell it to them. They sell that. Again, they donate it. You can create a tribute page that can come from someone you know who has Alzheimer's and is still alive, or you can dedicate a page to someone who has passed away. And you can, it's kind of like a GoFundMe and raise money that way, and the classic way of simply donating money. Now that I've given you a few ideas of how you can help fight against the disease, I can conclude my speech. So today I've talked about the fact of Alzheimer's is a little more than just memory loss. It's losing someone that you love and having to watch them go through it. We've talked about how it affects the family in various ways, physical, emotional, and just the overall effect. And we talked about what can be done, that there is no cure, but there are always ways to help. Hopefully this has helped you to understand the disease a bit better, as I know some of you said that you know people with the disease. And if you don't know anyone with the disease and you come across someone who has Alzheimer's, hopefully this will be in the back of your mind and you can kind of remember what they're going through and different ways maybe to be a little cautious around them. I would like to leave you with this last statement. In life, it is always hard to determine what might occur and what type of hand you will be dealt. But if there's one thing this disease can teach us, it is to hold on to the sweet times, because you never know when you might lose them. Thank you.